Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome back to another Walking Dead video. So I do want to talk about the episode 2 trailer, or at least the trailer that we got after episode 1 aired, which was, I guess, for episode 2, but it was also other episodes. I really want to focus on some aspects to it here, and that is with the Super Walkers and some stuff with Daryl and whatnot, because that's a big focus here, for season 2, and I just want to give some thoughts on that and where I see this going here for episode 2 and what I think episode 2 is going to focus on here. So before we go any further, make sure to be a subscriber if you do want to get all my Walking Dead content like this. I will be doing my Q&A video tomorrow, so stay tuned for that. And so for episode 2, it seems like we're going to be focusing on Carol and Ash, and also obviously there's going to be a storyline with Daryl and Isabel, and I do wonder where that story is going to go. The synopsis for the episode, which is airing this Sunday here on October 6th, says Carol and Ash take an unexpected detour. Daryl and Isabel uncover a new threat at the Nest. And so I think that the focus here for episode 2 is obviously going to be split between Carol and Daryl. I've seen a lot of criticism about the fact that the premiere for this season focused a lot on Carol, and there was a lot of concerns about the rest of the season focusing more on Carol and sort of ignoring a lot of the Fran storyline. And I'll just say, I don't think that's what's going to happen at all. The second that Carol and Daryl reunite, first of all, they're just going to be together, and that's just going to be the story. And obviously they'll focus on the Fran storyline with Madame Genet and all of that, but Carol will be there, right? Like, that'll just be the only difference. And I think the premiere needed to focus a lot more on Carol because you had to set up the fact that she was getting to France. And so I thought they did that overall pretty well. There were some issues I would say here and there with the premiere, but I think it was still a very solid premiere. And so this synopsis here, focusing on the first part, it says Carol and Ash take an unexpected detour. That is going to be likely what happens here. They talked about in episode 1, they are going to stop off somewhere first and obviously refuel and whatnot, and then eventually, I guess, get to France. It is going to feel weird, I will say. Like, I thought that she would just get to France in the very first episode, but I'm trying to picture how it's going to play out in the second episode. Like, do they stop there for the entirety of the second episode, or is it just for like the first half of the episode, or what happens here? I am kind of curious about that, because if it is just for like the first half of the episode, then I'm definitely okay with that. I think that if it's the whole episode, I might have an issue with it, just because I want Carol to already be in France. And yes, it's only been one episode, so I'm not like wanting her to be in France immediately, but I think that for sure by the second episode's ending, she should already be there and sort of reacting to the fact that, oh, I'm in France now, and where is Daryl, right? And so this way in episode 3, we can just at least focus on Carol and Daryl maybe reuniting in that episode, or at least her getting close to finding Daryl, right? And so, yeah, I think that's going to be a lot of Carol's storyline, but I really do want to focus on this other aspect here with Daryl and Isabel and what's happening at the Nest, because that is the main storyline here for this season, is what is happening at the Nest, what's happening with Madame Genet and whatnot. And obviously, Daryl and Lo Sang, they're not really getting along at this point. Like, I think that there is going to be a point, this season where both of these characters just end up, completely on different sides. Like, I think that maybe Lo Sang is working with Madame Genet. Like, I'm trying to figure out where the story is going to go here. And I know that the Nest, the one thing that they talked about with this place is that, like, Madame Genet sort of represents an extreme to one side, and the Nest is also another extreme on like the other side. And so maybe the Nest isn't necessarily connected with Madame Genet overall, but it's just something else that also is sort of a problem this season, and Lo Sang ends up being a villain, right? I could see that. And so Daryl, he's trying to get away from Lo Sang and the Nest, but also trying to get away from Madame Genet. Like, episode 2 is called Moulin Rouge, so I don't know if it's because of, the fact that rouge obviously is red in French, right? So I wonder if it's just because of like blood or something, so there's going to be a battle scene or something that happens here in this episode. But Daryl and Isabel uncovering a new threat at the Nest is very interesting, and I wonder exactly how they discover that. I feel like it's not going to necessarily be Daryl. I think Daryl is going to be having issues with Lo Sang, and we're going to see a lot of that, but I think Isabel's probably going to play a big role in that and actually find out some stuff pretty early on, and then tell Daryl, and then there's going to be a bunch of issues and whatnot. We know that there's going to be a ceremony, at least I think it's going to happen in episode 2. We see Laurent with Lo Sang and that mystery character, and I don't know what the ceremony's about because they haven't really said yet, but obviously it has something to do, involving Laurent. Maybe what they find out is in connection to that, right? Like, it's something actually really bad. Maybe Madame Genet's actually involved in a lot of that. that, because for Madame Genet, the focus is really going to be on trying to find Daryl, right? Like, that's going to be her main focus, is she needs to find Daryl. And we see that in the trailer, actually. I think Caudron actually says if Genet finds him first, like, Dixon is a dead man. And so I really do like that. I do hope that Cadrone at least finds some sort of peace at some point, in this season, because I do feel like the character is going to die. I think that it makes sense for him to die. I think it would be cool if he didn't, but it's just, where the story's going overall. It almost seems like he's sacrificing himself overall. So I just think that that's probably where the story's going to go. And he's trying to help out Daryl here in this situation because Madame Genet is trying to find him. And obviously, at one point, we know she is going to get him, but he is going to escape at that point, and then Genet finds Daryl at some point, right? Or at least maybe the Nest gives Daryl to Genet. I don't know how it's going to work out, but Daryl is eventually going to end up with Pouvoir. I think that's going to happen probably, episode 3 or 4, because he's going to escape right after that, and, there's going to be a lot of scenes with Carol, unless they reunite in the finale, but I don't think that's going to happen. That's probably going to happen around 4 or 5, or I don't know. I think they're going to have a lot of this season together. So looking at how all this can play out here, if we know that Daryl's going to end up with Pouvoir at some point, then whatever happens at the Nest here, just based off of the synopsis for episode 2, is going to happen in episode 2, kind of in 3. There's going to be some sort of battle here. And based off of the pacing for the episodes, to be honest, just how the season is structured, I feel like the ceremony is going to happen very early on, or at least halfway through episode 2. Maybe towards the end or something. And then maybe Madame Genet shows up, I guess with her soldiers and whatnot. And then this battle happens at the Nest. And then that's how Daryl and Isabel get captured, because we know Daryl and Isabel are going to get captured because the trailer, right, actually showed them both captured. So that's likely going to happen around there. And I could see how episode 2, at least for Daryl's story, if that's the main story, that would be a really well-structured episode. Basically, they're at the Nest, a lot of stuff with Daryl and Isabel is happening, this and that. A ceremony happens, Madame Genet shows up, there's this whole battle, and then in episode 3, Daryl is trapped, I guess, at Pouvoir, and then I guess we'll see where things go there based off of the trailer for episode 3. That really is the episode where I'm kind of assuming that Isabel, I guess, could potentially die. I mean, I honestly don't know if she is going to die. I'm just really going based off of the fact that there's not a lot of promotion for the character anymore. So I'm just kind of thinking that it just makes sense. I don't know. I'm hoping not, because Isabel is one of my favorite characters. But, obviously some of the best characters do die early on and are only 2-season characters. So these shots, though, I think are absolutely insane. I don't know which episode this actually takes place in, if this is episode 4 or 5, if it's later on, maybe it's episode 2, but you do see, I'm guessing this is Pouvoir, some of the soldiers anyways, although I don't know if the soldiers would be doing this, but they're creating variant walkers here, or I guess super walkers. And so this is just absolutely insane that they're actually doing this here. This one super walker turning here just looks absolutely insane. Honestly, this is really incredible. I can't wait to see what this scene is connected to here. I mean, I think that in general, we're going to see a lot of super walkers. I think that even though this scene looks really cool, and obviously for the trailer is really exciting, we're going to see a lot of scenes with super walkers, I think, this season. It's going to be really a lot more than we got in season 1. I think that we're going to get a lot of scenes here. We also do have this shot here of Daryl, and there's some shots related to this, actually, where we do see Cadrone. I think this is really cool. If Daryl and Cadrone are working together against Pouvoir, honestly, really incredible stuff. The one thing, though, that would be kind of cool is if this is actually the Nest. Imagine if the Nest was actually villains as well. If there was almost 2 villains this season. If Daryl is dealing with the Nest and is also dealing with Pouvoir. That'd be crazy. But yeah, Daryl and Cadrone working together here. I mean, I'm assuming they are, just based off the angles of the shots here. We don't really know at all. Cadrone is looking at the vehicles driving this way, and there's buildings behind, right? And then when you go to the shot here of Daryl, it's just the woods behind him. And I remember the shot originally in the Comic-Con trailer where you do see Cadrone here. I don't even think anything's behind him. So I think that they're reacting to, it's either going to be Pouvoir or it's going to be the Nest, right? I think it's likely Pouvoir, though, just because Cadrone is here. And so I think it's going to be really, honestly, a really cool scene where we see Cadrone helping out Daryl. But yeah, episode 2, I'm so excited for it. I can't wait to see, where the story is going to go next here. I really can't wait to pick up with the France storyline. I know that criticism, I understand it, I guess, because if you really wanted to see a lot more of the France storyline, because that's why you really liked season 1, then I guess episode 1 of season 2 might not have been for you. I do understand that criticism, I guess, to that extent. I just think that, having Carol a part of the story is obviously something that they want to do. And I think Carol showing up randomly, just being there in France, I also think people would criticize as well. So you kind of have to explain it in some way. And I think they did. There were definitely some issues here and there, but I think they overall, I think it was handled pretty well. And I think for episode 2 here, Carol needs to get there, I think, by the end of the episode. I would prefer halfway through the episode, but there will be more of a focus on Daryl in episode 2 as well. So I think that it's likely going to be at the end of the episode where she actually finally gets to France. And then going into episode 3, we're all going to be talking about Daryl and Carol potentially reuniting. Like, it depends on where the story is going to be overall. Like, I think the way it's likely going to play out is somehow Carol, when she gets to France, is going to end up with Pouvoir. I think she's going to learn about Daryl and where he's at because she's going to be hearing references to the American and stuff. I think that makes a lot of sense. Again, as we watch every single episode here week to week, we're going to be able to piece it together a little bit more. And I do think in the next like 2 or 3 weeks here, you know, by episode 3, 4, around there, they likely will have reunited at that point. I mean, just based off of filming anyways, like from what I remember, I think they were filming episode 3. It was like 2 or 3, and I think they already reunited. So that's why in my head, I'm kind of expecting it to be around there, though I'm not thinking 2 anymore, just based off of where the story is. So maybe 3, like at the end of 3 or like halfway through. I could see that, but yeah, we'll have to wait and see. But definitely post all your thoughts down below. Hope you all enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.